Welcome to Success Weekly with James Tharris, a weekly dose of thought-provoking ideas and helpful tips on improving your mindset. And now, here's your host, James Tharris.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Success Weekly. I'm your host, James Tharris, and we have been speaking from the book Psycho-Cybernetics. Basically what I'm doing is reading a blurb or two out of each of the chapters and then kind of bringing it up to speed to maybe more modern day thinking and how it applies to becoming a more successful person. I really recommend this book. If you've listened to the last few chapters here, you understand the power in just having some of these little thoughts come into your mind as a result of reading this. It's priceless. So this is what chapter? Chapter number 8, which is called Ingredients of the Success Type Personality and How to Acquire Them. Would you like to know what the ingredients for a successful type of personality is and how to achieve them? That's basically what this chapter is asking you. And if you're listening to this and you're not saying yes, then I have to ask, why are you listening to this? That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to get you to think on a larger scale like that and to want to be, like they say, the inquiring minds want to know. I think that was the National Enquirer's commercial, but what a great tag for something like this, right? Inquiring minds really do want to know. All right, so here's what I've gotten highlighted here so far. Let me see if, first of all, before I say anything, we've got several things here. Let me kind of just go through what those tips are without getting into any talking about it just yet. But number one is sense of direction. Again, these are success type personalities. They have a sense of direction. They have understanding. Let's see, number 3. They have courage. Number 4, they're charitable. They have charity. They show charity. Number 5, they have esteem. That would be self-esteem. Number 6, they have self-confidence. And number 7, they have self-acceptance. Now, there's a lot of meat to be had in each one of these, and I'm not going to take the time to go through all of them, but it really comes down to, they show a little, what are those called, acronyms, where each letter means something. So they're using the word success to spell all of these, I guess it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 7 of these personality traits or things that successful people have. And so if you look at the word success, it's broken down into each letter meaning one of those things. S would be sense of direction. U would be understanding. C would be courage. The next C would be charity. The E would be esteem. The S would be self-confidence. And the second S would be self-acceptance. So let me see now what I had highlighted back here. I guess this is on the next page. It says prescription. Give yourself a goal worth working for. Better still, get yourself a project. Decide what you want out of a situation. Always have something ahead of you to look forward to work for and hope for. Look forward, not backward. And that's really what we do in our martial arts program. If you think about the whole concept of becoming a black belt, and it may be different for different schools, but for us it's kind of like this. It's a goal. My goal for every student that comes into my program is to help them become a black belt. Not to help them get to black belt, but to help them become a black belt. And I have to start inside. It has to start mentally. If I can't get that student to buy into the idea of becoming a black belt, well, they'll never do it. So my job is to do a little bit of a sales process with them, sell them on themselves, to have them develop the urge and desire to want to improve their lot in life. And that starts with something, in many cases, as simple as just exercising regularly or being around a positive group or learning to defend yourself, which will give you more confidence. And it's a lot of fun as well, and there's a social element to it as well. But the most important thing is to help them establish a goal and understand why that goal is something they should be looking forward to, and why should they be looking forward to it. Even more importantly, why should they be looking forward to that goal? So in our program, when a student becomes a black belt, they've gone through a transformative process. So it might be that they needed more confidence, and that was something that they gained from becoming a black belt. For some people, it might be just the opposite. They need to learn how to control their temper, and by becoming a black belt, they have to do that. They have to learn to temper temper back their attitude And so that's part of what they get for becoming a black belt. Somebody else may visualize, what they have to do physically, and they've not done a lot of physical things in the past. Now they visualize that what they have to do physically is going to help make them lose weight and tone muscle and gain coordination and other things that go along with physical attributes and making us feel good. Well, so if I help them become a black belt, I've helped them with those other intrinsic things, because the black belt itself means something different for everybody, and that depends on your goals. That's why it's so important to have what the author said here, to have something to look forward to, something to work for, and something to hope for. Well, in the martial arts, the first level of that is the black belt. That is the biggest goal for most people is black belt. Unfortunately, a lot of people come into the martial arts and they set their goals way too high, and they say, I'm going to become a grandmaster, 9th degree black belt. And they haven't even proven to themselves that they can make it to 1st degree black belt, which there is a huge difference between a 1st degree black belt and a 9th degree black belt. For a 1st degree black belt can be got in some schools, can be reached in 2 years. Our school, it's 4 years. Some schools, it's 10 years. So getting to 1st degree black belt is just the first cog in that wheel. Now, getting to 9th degree black belt and doing it properly, well, somebody's not going to be able to do that for, let's say, 35, 45, 55 years, probably closer to the 50 to 55 year mark before they can become a 9th degree black belt. So for a brand new person walking in off the street who's either had no training or very little training to set that goal, I'm going to become a grandmaster 9th degree black belt. Personally, I haven't even done that yet. It is a goal of mine at some point, but I'm not thinking that far in advance right now. I'm only thinking about my next level, my next degree. Of course, I've got those other thoughts in my mind off in the horizon somewhere, and as I get closer to them, I'll be able to easily see them. Just like if you're in a boat and you're away from land and you can see nothing but water, and then as you start to notice a horizon where there's an island or land is ahead, and the closer you get to it, the more of it you can see, and the more you can tell what it is, and the more you can see where exactly you want to pull the boat in for the safest and most efficient route and those kind of things. It's a little difficult when you're that far out to sea. Let's say you're 35 miles out to sea and you can't see a horizon. It's kind of difficult to say, I'm going to dock the boat right over there, and when you really can't see that over there. So it's important to keep that in mind too. But you do have to have something to look forward to, and that's the thing that knocks a lot of people out when they finally get to the rank of black belt, when they finally become black belts. If they haven't reset their minds and their goals for something a little further in the future, that's the reason why there are so many people that get to 1st degree black belt and drop out. Just like in high school, a lot of people don't pass or go past high school after they graduate as a senior. Many people go into the workforce, they get married, they go into the military or what have you, and they don't continue their schooling and education. And most of the time, that's because they didn't have a good reason to do it. They really didn't want to become a doctor or a lawyer, making a extra amount of money or living in a specific type of house or being able to afford a specific type of car. None of that stuff mattered to them. So for them, going to college was kind of not necessary and a waste of time maybe, and that's the reason why they didn't continue their education. But if they had reset their goals and thought, oh my goodness, I've got all this knowledge and ability and understanding now as a senior in high school, man, I would love to see what else I can learn and what else I can achieve in this life, and especially through my education. Maybe I want to go to college and work on getting a degree in something. So there's an intrinsic reason for them to carry through and continue on with their schooling. Well, that's the same thing we have to remember as martial artists and as human beings. We always have to have something to look forward to. Okay, let's see here. Next page, be willing to see the truth. It says, it doesn't matter who's right, but what's right. An automatic guidance system corrects its course from negative feedback data. It acknowledges errors in order to correct them and stay on course. So must you. Admit your mistakes and errors, but don't cry over them. Correct them and go forward. In dealing with other people, try to see the situation from their viewpoint as well as your own. So that's part of having courage, is being willing to see the truth and admit that everything's not perfect and you don't have all of the things you need to have in order. How do I say it? In order. You don't have everything in order that you need to have in order to experience more success. It's a lot of in orders there. So a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it myself, we dwell on the past, and we sometimes think about our mistakes and dwell on those much more than we think about our successes and dwell on those. But we also kind of cover up our shortcomings mentally so that we protect our self-image. We cover up for and make excuses and justify why we aren't in life where we want to be. And that's what this is really saying, is in order for you to really become successful, you have to become honest about what do you need work on. Where are your shortcomings? Don't just and not say things like, well, that's just how I am. That's kind of admitting that you're fine with it and you have no intention of changing. You know, that is how I am, but that's not how I want to be. So therefore, I'm going to make a public announcement that I'm going to try to start doing this, and I need your help to keep me on track with it. See, that's a different thought process there, and that's why it starts with being honest with yourself, and that takes courage to do that. Let's see. Only by actions can goals, desires, and beliefs be translated into realities. See, there was for a long time there was this they call it the law of attraction, which I fully believe in, by the way. But the problem with the way that they were talking about it in like books like The Secret, which is a great book by Rhonda Byrne, and there was a little accompanying DVD movie that went with it. It was fantastic, and it really inspired me. But what they kind of failed to include in there that people got wrong was that you have to work. You've got to put work behind your goals, and you've got to have actions. In other words, like this paragraph said, only by actions can goals, desires, and beliefs be translated into realities. So my wife and I were talking last night about Napoleon Hill, and there was a statement that he made, and he said it best when he said, anything that the mind of man can conceive and then believe, it can achieve. And I had a huge epiphany when I thought about that, because I was watching one of my mentors speak and really stopping. I stopped like every 20 or 30 seconds, it seemed like. It was probably more like every 2 minutes of about a 30-minute presentation he was doing. And I thought, wow, every time he'd say something, it was just like reading a book, and I'd have an epiphany moment and stop the video. And then my wife and I would have conversation about it and say, oh my goodness, I see what's happening here. I see what he's trying to do. He's actually telling the truth. He is basically being honest with the people watching. And half the people watching are looking at it with a skeptical eye, saying, "Oh, you're just trying to sell me something, or you're trying to do this, and there's an ulterior motive behind that, and so I'm not sure I'm going to trust what you're telling me." And the other half of us, and I include myself in the other half, we're looking at that and going, "My goodness, thank you for telling me what I really needed to hear. Anyway, I already knew it, but I needed to hear somebody else tell me that so that I could recognize where I'm making the mistakes, and I can be honest about it and work on it and move forward instead of continually moving laterally, sliding sideways, or going backward in life." And that's the reason why we go backward in life a lot of times. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, as the saying goes. And that, I think, has a lot to do with us making mistakes. And then the reason we continue to have these 2 steps back is because we're not learning from those mistakes and moving forward. So when you figure something out, you should be able to move forward more rapidly. And that's the problem. That's where our self-esteem comes in and tries to protect us from that pain of looking in the mirror and realizing, you are the problem. You're the reason why you're not getting further ahead in your life. It's not your boss's fault. It's not your coworker's fault. It's not the government's fault or the economy's fault. It's your own fault because of things you did do or didn't do. Either you did them correctly or you didn't do them correctly. And if you want to change the way that unfolds for you in the future, you've got to do things differently, or you're going to get this very same things. I mean, if you keep planting corn seeds, expecting watermelons to crop up there, pop up, and get lucky once in a while, forget it. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen. As long as you put corn seeds in the ground, you're going to get corn come up. So if you want to get watermelons to grow, you have to plant a watermelon seed, which is going to have a different look to it, different feel to it, and maybe even some different rules that you have to abide by to get it to produce the crop that you're looking for, and the size of the watermelon you want, and the coloration and the water density, all these things. You might have to tend that particular plant differently than you would corn in order to get it to grow and yield its crop. But to sit back and keep spreading corn seeds thinking that someday that's just going to work itself out, that's delusional, right? And so that's kind of what this is talking about here, as far as being honest. And I think that is like one of the first and foremost things that anybody has to do in order to become more successful, is to learn to get honest and recognize how much of their lack of success is their own doing. Very powerful. How much of their success is their own doing? How much of my trouble in my life has been my own doing? The fights that I got into, the arguments I got into, how many of those did I cause? Did somebody get upset and give me the bird on the highway, and did it happen 3 or 4 times? And okay, well, maybe there's a reason that I'm getting this from 3 or 4 or 5 different people over the course of a month. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and I need to pay more attention. Maybe I'm not using my turn signal enough. By the way, I use mine all the time, so I'm just throwing an example out there. Maybe I'm cutting over into a lane too quickly, or I'm not letting somebody into traffic or whatever, and my behaviors, sometimes they're rude then. Maybe that's the reason why I keep seeing the bird being flipped at me. Okay, well, if I want to stop that, bird watching, then I have to change something about what I'm projecting out into the universe, what I'm projecting out into traffic. And that's a powerful place to be, when you can realize, oh my goodness, he's right. And there are some things that I'm doing wrong, and I've got to admit them. I've got to kind of pull the scab off of those things and feel the pain, and then get somebody to tell me how to fix it. And that's why we read these books, because these guys figured it out, and they will tell you how to fix and what to fix. But you also need that mentor. And so, as I said, I was listening to my mentor speak last night. In fact, 2 of my mentors, and watching the more senior mentor kind of mentoring the junior mentor right there in front of me. And I don't think a lot of people got what was going on in that video when he was talking to us. There was a lot more going on than just what he was saying with his words, although they were very, very powerful and very poignant. There was a heck of a lot more going on. Now, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have recognized that video for any more than it being 2 guys sitting on a couch talking into a camera telling me how to become more successful. That's all I would have thought about it 10 years ago. But now that I've climbed the ladder a little bit and I've become, I got closer to the horizon, as I talked about it, and I can see more. Now I recognize things and patterns, and I can see 5 things in one picture. That's like the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a video is the same way. So that you can be looking at a video and listening to a video, and it's worth hundreds of thousands of words based on what the words that the people on the screen said. Or for me, this podcast, the words that I'm saying hopefully are leading you to some other thoughts, and you go, wow, that's powerful there, what he just said. I never quite thought about it like that. You see, and then once, that's called getting your imagination stretched. And once that happens, your mind can never go back to what it was before. Again, it's kind of like the movie The Matrix. I've talked about that a couple of times. There was a time where Neo, it was Keanu Reeves' character, he realized he was in the Matrix, and then there was a point in time where he wanted to go back in, and his mentor Morpheus told him, you can't go back in. Once you're out of it, you can't go back into it. And that's the thing. And that basically what he was saying was, once your mind is stretched to possibilities, once your mind is stretched to the realities, you can never go back to looking at something the same way a second time. It's kind of like if you were to watch a magician do a coin trick, and then at the end of it, everybody's wowed, and he shows you how he did that trick. The next time you see him do that trick, you will not see that same trick. You will see the trick that he's doing or using to trick your mind, and everybody else will be fooled, and you'll know something that nobody else knows except for you and that magician, exactly how it's being done, which means then you can manipulate that same concept and put it to use to create a second trick or a third trick that's maybe bigger and better. And that's why magic has never gone out of style, because they keep finding new and interesting ways to bring back the same, the old things, just in a new, updated, interesting way. And that's because their minds were stretched at one point when they studied with their magician master, and he taught them his trade secrets and tricks. Well, these guys, they're not allowed to just go out and share it, and nor would they want to, because they would be messing with their own profession if they just let everybody know how to do it. Although there have been a couple of people that have made their career, like Penn and Teller, on kind of showing you how the trick is done, but then doing it in front of your eye and still making a trick out of it. So, think about that. You really couldn't, what Penn and Teller do really couldn't be done unless they fully understood the laws of magic and how tricks are done. And that's how they're able to spin that just a little bit to make us go, I don't believe I just saw what I saw. It happened right in front of my eyes. Well, that's the same thing that's going on in our mind. Guys, you've got to think about being honest with yourself, and learning, and if part of being honest with yourself is saying to yourself, you know what, I'm not a person that takes much action. I do a very little bit, as little as I can get by with to get something done. And that's a natural thing, by the way. I'm like that. I like to get as best results as I can with as least amount of work as possible, because that's what we call working smart. But I have never been afraid to jump in and get my hands dirty and my feet wet, working on a project and working on it for extra hours until I get it up to the point where I don't have to work on it as much anymore. I've never been shy about starting something and pushing and giving that Herculean effort up front to get it moving, because I know that eventually I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get smarter about it, and I'm going to learn how to do it much faster and much easier than I'm doing it right now. And that's called the learning curve. Anything that you start, let's say you're going to start learning a new language, well, you're going to have to learn some new laws about language. You know, the English language is one of the most difficult to learn, and that's because it does not follow many of the rules of other languages. So, for instance, in English we would say, that phone over there is gray. Well, maybe in Spanish you'd say gray, the phone is over there. And that's a whole different mindset that you have to adopt in order to learn that language. And so you've got to unlearn some things. You've got to learn some additional things. And then you've got to do a lot of practicing. And if you don't practice, it doesn't come. But if you can push through to that learning, past that learning curve and learn that language, imagine how much more you understand about the English language as a result, and how much more that gives you the ability to learn even a third language. Once you've understood some of the basics of Spanish, then you might be able to learn French quicker, or Russian quicker, or Swahili quicker, or whatever, or Portuguese quicker, because they're kind of similar, or Greek quicker, because they're a little bit more similar languages. So if you didn't go through that process of fighting through it and not knowing what you were doing and not understanding things and just allowing that to keep you down, you would never get to the point where you could learn that second language, which would help you with all those other benefits. And it's kind of like becoming a black belt. That's what happens when a student becomes a black belt, is their mind is widened. And if they haven't reset their goals to say, wow, I am so curious to see what else there is to learn through this martial arts stuff here, and what else I'm able to teach my body to do and my mind to do, my goodness, I can't wait to get onto that next leg of my journey. See, if a student doesn't get there by the time they've reached their probationary black belt phase, they often don't continue. And for me, it was never a doubt. I always had another reason to keep me going, something more to look forward to. All right, let's see. It says, why not bet on yourself here? I'll end it with this here. And this is, standing still, failure to act, causes people who are faced with a problem to become nervous, feel stymied, trapped, and can bring on a host of physical symptoms. So I'd have to read the rest of the chapter. Okay, let's see. Let's little piece here. Prescription, be willing to make a few mistakes, to suffer a little pain to get what you want. That kind of goes right along with what I was just talking about. You know, you have to be willing to endure a little pain. And so pain in this case is the pain of not knowing something, the pain of not understanding a concept, and doing everything you have to do so that you fully understand that. And if you understand it just a little bit, that's okay, but that's like learning the basics of something. But then you have to learn how to dig down deeper and become an expert in something. That's why they always talk about the jack of all trades but master of none. It's okay to be a jack of all trades, and in some ways I feel that I am a jack of all trades. But I am a master of one or two things, or maybe three things in my life that I've truly mastered. And, you know, those are the things that you know, set me apart from other people who do what I do. And, you know, that's what you've got to keep in mind with your own self. You've got these talents, and it's okay to you know, be scared once in a while, but you can't let that fear stop you from fighting through the pain that you have to fight through in order to get to the pleasure that's on the other side. Everything, if you think about everything in life that's really worth something and worth getting and worth having and worth doing and worth becoming, it takes work. So you can't become Mr. Universe just because you shoot some steroids in your muscles. You still have to lift muscles and hurt those muscles and push and push and push and push past. And then maybe the steroids give you a little extra advantage and you can grow faster. But you don't need the steroids to get big muscles. You can work on those. But you can't just inject steroids into your muscle or anything else that I'm aware of and just see your muscles start growing while you sit there and do nothing, right? Same with losing weight. You know, you can't just sit on the couch and take a pill, which is what the people on TV hope that you buy into, and they tell you just buy this pill and you don't even have to exercise or change your diet. Yeah, that's why those pills aren't around anymore, right? And another batch comes on the scene once every year or other year, and we buy into it thinking, oh, what if? Maybe this is the one. And it's just more snake oil salesman stuff. and we never get any results from it. That's because we have to get out and physically work. You've got to change things. You have to change the amount of food you put into your system and the quality of food you put into your system. And you have to leave certain things alone. You have to stop doing certain things. You can't be physically lean and in shape and all these things if you're putting things like mayonnaise and sauerkraut and extra cheese and things like that on your food, and what are those, extra sour cream and chives and these double baked, double loaded potatoes. You can't expect to eat those things and stay slim and in shape and lose weight and all that. It's just, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You have to, and that's what I'm saying as far as being honest. You have to get honest and say, you know, I love these things, and honestly, I don't want to give them up. But honestly, I want to slim down and lose this extra 20 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever, and I want to be able to fit in these pants again, and I want that worse than I want that double baked, double loaded potato that I can get from the restaurant. All right, so I'm going to let that go. I'm going to force myself to not eat those things, and I'm going to force myself to learn to enjoy a healthier diet instead. See, if you get honest like that, you can do things like that. And you can do the same thing with your successes in business or at your job or in your sport or activity in the martial arts. You have to get honest. How much training am I doing, or how much am I not doing? Am I really giving it everything I've got? Am I really doing extra things like studying and reading out of books and studying YouTube videos? And am I asking my instructor for help? Those kind of things. See, if you're not doing that, you can't blame anybody but yourself. And a parent of a child would have to ask the same thing, you know. We can't physically teach one-on-one every single student in the class. That's impossible. We just can't do it. So we have these group classes, just like they don't have one-on-one teaching in first grade. Maybe some of the students who really need it will get some tutoring, but really it's a group lesson, and then the people who need the extra help should make themselves known they need extra help by raising their hand and asking questions, going to the teacher and saying, or from a parent's perspective, hey, my child's having trouble understanding this reading. What can we do at home to help him or her learn how to do this so that my daughter or my son can succeed at this test and, move into second grade next year? What can we do as a family? See, that's the same thing that has to happen in martial arts. Is that for parents with kids, we're going to show them all the things. We're going to work with them one-on-one occasionally. We're going to, put them into situations where they have to function on their own, and then we're going to watch and see what they do. So if the children aren't developing the way you hope that they would, some of that sometimes can be the fault of the instructor not paying attention. Absolutely. Bring attention to that, of course, before it becomes too much of a problem. But also, don't rely on the instructor to be the one that does everything for your child. You've got to let the child learn through trial and error, and they have to learn to get honest with themselves and say, you know what, I'm lazy. I don't feel like doing this. That's the reason why my flexibility is not any better. That's the reason why I can't kick any higher or harder or better than I am, because I'm not really putting any effort into it, because to me it doesn't matter that much. That's really, if you get honest, that's what's going on in a lot of the children's mind that are in the class. And so it's our job as martial arts instructors and life coaches to help motivate them to want to do those things, not to force them to do them. This is not the military. It's paramilitary, by the way. Martial arts is military arts, basically, is what it means. And it parallels it, but we can't, put somebody, and I don't have somebody for 8 hours a day where I can put them in parade rest and make them stand there locked out at parade rest for an hour, and while I, yell at them and berate them and talk to them and tell them what they can and can't do. I mean, I don't have the time and desire to do that. So that means that the student, when they come to the martial arts, they have to remember that it's a 50-50 relationship. We will meet you halfway and show you all the things. We'll be honest with you and tell you what you need to be doing. We will compliment you when you do the things right. We will guide you and course correct you and tell you when you start missing classes, when are you going to be back? We're going to get you back on track. And then when you're in class, we're going to do what we can to motivate you to want to train harder. And we're going to put together different drills and things to help develop specific skills. But there might be 10 kids in a class, and out of those 10 kids, only 2 of them really excel, and the other 8 don't do so well. Well, what's the difference? Well, the 2 that really excelled are the ones that did all the things I just talked about. They were honest about what they needed to do, and they weren't afraid to work. And the reason for working was because they wanted to gain this skill, which then represented itself with a new color of belt around their waist. And for them, that's all the motivation they needed to do the extra work. Where the other, maybe the 8 kids and the other 8 kids, where we still have to get them motivated to the point where they mentally get to the point of these other two kids. That's our goal. That's our real goal, is to motivate them. And then they should say, what can I do? What should I be doing? And how much practice should I be doing? And parents should be, just like you would if your son was playing, for every dad that's his son is playing football, do you go out in the backyard and play pass with him? More than likely you do. Because maybe you enjoyed football, and maybe you think, well, I don't know martial arts, so I really couldn't help my child. You can help your child if you watch some of what your instructor's doing in the class, and we have some certain tools like kicking bags and kicking shields and paddles and those little pool noodles and things like that. You can certainly help with things like that, or set aside 5 minutes and say, okay, son, I want you to do or daughter, I want you to do your form to the very best of your ability. And as a parent, maybe you're not on the floor, which is a good reason maybe to think about getting on the floor and seeing what it's really like. But sitting on the benches watching the instructor, you can tell when a form is done correctly. Any parent that comes in and watches 3 or 4 classes of their child learning this form is going to learn some of that form by osmosis, just by watching and seeing. And you're going to recognize when your child's doing the turns right or not right, or when they're putting power or not putting power. And you could help them through that with just setting aside 5 minutes per day, a couple of times a week, and saying, okay, today we're going to work on getting more power out of that second move in your form. All right, turn left, low block, step through, and punch. Okay, let's work on that, Joey. And I want you to do it 10 times. And if you do it 10 times, here's the reward I'm going to do for you or give to you. I'm going to get you an extra. Instead of getting you the 6-piece nuggets, I'm going to get you the 9-piece. Whatever. I'm going to allow you to go skating this weekend, or I'm going to allow you to have your friend over, or whatever. You create some kind of a reward for them so that they get motivated and want to do these things. So we can't force kids to do things. I mean, we can force them to do things, but they're not going to respect us or love us anymore for forcing them to do things, as much as getting them motivated to want to do things. Now, you may have to force a child to brush their teeth for a long time until they realize the benefits that it's giving them, and then hopefully they pick up that habit and run with it. But in the beginning, you might have to enforce it and force them to do things. But it's much, much better and much more effective if you learn how to motivate them to want to do things. And that's really the trick, isn't it? Is figuring out what motivates somebody. It's figuring out what makes somebody tick, figuring out their hot button. Right? And if you can figure that out with a human being, you can get them to move heaven and earth for whatever it is. Some people, that's more money. Some people, that's just recognition, being recognized in front of people for their efforts and their work. That might be all that's needed in some cases. And that could be between 2 kids, one of them getting that recognition of being patted on the back and told him, I'm proud of you. And the other one gets to hears that. And so there's a little bit of satisfaction from the one. And the other one might think, man, I would like mom or dad to be able to honestly say that about me. What could I do? And that's kind of what we're hoping, is like motivating the one child through the other child, that they'll want some of that positive reinforcement, and being told they're proud, that you're proud of them, might be all that they need to hear. Maybe they just need an extra $10 for an incentive to do something. Find out what motivates your child. Find out what motivates you. All right, and that all starts with getting honest about yourself. And so I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did enjoy it, let me know in the comments, and be sure to like it and share it with friends and family.
That's all for this week. Tune in next week for another episode of Success Weekly. Do you have an idea you'd like James to talk about in an upcoming episode? Post your comments and be sure to share this podcast with friends.